Amid the collective action taken by South Korea's trainee doctors, the government says it won't hold anyone accountable who returns to work by Thursday. President Yoon says 339 square kilometers of land that have been off limits due to military purposes will be free for more private use. He unveiled this today at Ulsan Air Base as he continued his discussion sessions with the public. To resolve Korean stocks being undervalued, a new value program has been introduced to give incentives to firms that come up with plans to boost their stock values. It's February 26, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. Medical crisis and concerns grow for a week now over doctors continuing to resign to protest the government's medical school quota hike. The government today gave a deadline saying it would not hold doctors accountable if they return to their posts by Thursday, February 29th. Shin Ha-young begins our coverage.
Amid the spread of collective action against the increase in medical school enrollment quotas, the government has issued a deadline for protesting doctors to return to work.
Considering the seriousness of the situation, the government is making a final plea. If you return to the hospital you left behind by the 29th, you won't be held responsible for what has already happened.
The country's Interior Minister Lee Sang-min has also urged doctors to engage in dialogue with the government for better medical service conditions. Hospitals have been scrambling, relying on attending physicians and professors to step in to fill medical service gaps left by the mass exodus of trainee doctors that began last Tuesday. However, the healthcare crisis is poised to deepen with medical school graduates turning down intern positions. According to the Health Ministry on Monday, as of Friday, over 9,000 trainee doctors from 100 major hospitals, accounting for over 70% of all trainee doctors, have walked off their jobs, and more than 10,000 trainee doctors have submitted resignation letters. The ministry said that trainee doctors who refuse to return to work by the deadline could start facing punishment the following day.
Starting from March, according to principles in the law, it is inevitable to impose a minimum 3-month license suspension for those who do not return to work, and to proceed with related judicial measures.
In the meantime, the Korean Medical Association has called for an immediate halt to the government's expansion plan, warning of legal action. Arguing that the plan would compromise the quality of medical education, the KMA said the entire medical sector would fight using every legal means available until the end. In addition, the KMA is planning a massive rally on Yeouido on March 3rd with 20,000 doctors expected to participate. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Visiting Chungcheongnam-do this time for the policy discussion, President Yoon today spoke about lifting development restrictions that are in place due to military-related protections, so more of the land can be used for private purposes. Kim Do-yeon reports.
The South Korean government is set to free 339 square kilometers of land for military installation protection zones for public and private development. President Yoon Suk-yeol announced this on Monday at Ulsan Air Base in Chungcheongnam-do Province, while there for a policy discussion with citizens explaining that the government considered the demands of the public while also keeping national security in mind.
군사시설 보호구역이 처음 도입된 것은 1970년대입니다. 그때와 지금은 많은 환경이 바뀌었습니다. 전국이 급격하게 도시화가 됐고 또 기술이 발전하면서 군과 우리 안보의 구조에도 큰 변화가 있었습니다.
Around the airbase alone, which is the country's biggest Air Force base, 141 square kilometers will be freed from the military protection zone. President Yoon added that with a new airport being built in the city of Ulsan and the lifting of protection zones, he hopes that the province can utilize the land to promote projects that the local government deems to be the best. The decision comes less than a week after Yoon's announcement to lift greenbelt restrictions as well. With the 2 development restrictions gone in the region, Yoon says he has high hopes for the region.
그동안 충남은 자동차, 디스플레이 등 우리 주력 산업을 키워왔고 자체 발광 OLED를 세계 최초로 양산에 냈습니다. 지금 충남은 아산만을 중심으로 서해안 산업 핵심 기지가 되겠다는 비전을 가지고 있습니다.
He also pledged to create industrial complexes in cities nearby. And as Chungcheongnam-do province is home to the headquarters of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, he will create a cluster for the defense industries centered in Nonsan.
지금 그 논산에 추진 중인 그 국방 미래기술 그 연구센터 그리고 태안에 추진 중인 드론 연구개발 활주로 테스트베드 요거는 지금 사타가 진행 중인데 마무리되는 대로 신속하게 추진할 것입니다.
In addition, at the discussion were also local residents who spoke of the needs of the people living outside the capital region. For example, one resident shared her excitement over the new National Police Hospital opening in Asan, which would be open to civilians as well. In addition, parents and students requested that the local education system be improved. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
To resolve the so-called Korea discount where local stocks are being undervalued, a new corporate value program has been introduced to give incentives to firms that set their own plans to boost stock values voluntarily. An Sung-jin provides details.
Despite substantial growth of the equity market over the past 10 years, Korea is still undervalued due to inefficient capital investment. This phenomenon is known as the Korea discount. The price-to-earnings, or PE ratio, indicates whether a stock at its current market price is expensive or cheap. The price-to-book value ratio, known as the PB ratio, demonstrates the total assets minus any liabilities on a given company's account books. While both are key indicators of a company's financial stability and prospects, the figures for South Korean firms hover below the average of advanced countries. A professor says that there are a couple of reasons for this.
The ones that are cited most often is the risk from North Korea. I also have personal suspicion that because of the Korea's corporate governance system, which favors perhaps the founders' families over stockholders, that those components reduce the attractiveness of Korean stocks to foreign investors, and that accounts for much of the Korean discount.
To tackle this ongoing economic task, the government shared key details of the Value Up Corporate program at its first policy seminar on Monday. It aims to create a positive feedback loop where listed companies get a proper valuation so that investors can secure a profit and then further reinvest in the capital market. The framework includes supporting listed companies and investors and establishing a system to support the implementation of the Corporate Value Up program. The government will provide tax incentives for companies that voluntarily practice a shareholder return policy. To assist investors in assessing company performance, the government will also create the Korea Value Up Index composed of listed companies that have shown profitability or a high corporate value by September.
Today's outline is only the first step to upgrading our capital market. We will sufficiently communicate with companies and investors by providing specific details until we can get rid of the concept of Korea discount.
The government aims to concretize guidelines for the Corporate Value Up program throughout the first half of the year. The plan is a medium to long-term agenda, and further commitments and continuous reforms will be needed to effectively boost corporate value. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In line with global efforts to ease carbon footprints, the government has shared a roadmap to green growth that includes tangible support for green startups. Moon Tae-ryun has more.
In an emergency economic meeting held on Monday, the government revealed its plans for strengthening the country's green industry for global markets.
We will be strengthening support for the green industry by fostering 1,000 green startups by 2027.
It also aims to nurture 10 select pre-unicorn firms in the industry. Pre-unicorn companies are startups with a value of over 100 billion Korean won, or roughly $75 million. The government plans to provide step-by-step support from setting up their business to overseas expansion, including operating a green startup lab where companies can test run their technologies and products. As pre-unicorn companies are currently unable to apply for various types of support due to their comparatively lower sales, the government is aiming to supplement this. Furthermore, 10 key sectors of green businesses have been selected for concentrated support, as the government deems domestic technology in said areas to be among the world's best. These include the likes of secondary batteries, renewable energy waste, and waste plastic. In order to advance into new overseas markets, the government will be targeting specific environmental problems facing each country and offering solutions. Examples stated were proposing alternatives for safe water management policies in Southeast Asian countries and branding Seoul's resource circulation policies for South American countries that are reliant on landfill sites without recycling. Another topic area that was discussed in the meeting was furthering financial support for vulnerable groups such as small business owners that are struggling with high interest rates on their loans. By the end of next month, the government plans to come up with a specific outline for who will be able to receive support and how, such as offering rent support and returning interest paid on loans. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Last week, the U.S. announced a new sanctions list against Russia, a day before the second anniversary of Moscow's full invasion of Ukraine. It's targeting more than 500 individuals and entities, among which is a South Korea-based firm. Our Yoon takes a closer look at a possible impact of the sanctions.
A day before the second anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. announced on Friday more sanctions against Russia, targeting more than 500 people and entities.
That's why I'm announcing more than 500 new sanctions. In response to Putin's brutal war of conquest, in response to Alexei Navalny's death, because make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Alexei's death.
Among the 93 entities on the new sanctions list is a South Korea-based company called Daesung International Trading, located in South Korea's southeastern city of Kimhae. An official from Seoul's foreign ministry said Monday that the head of the company is a Pakistani national, and the government has shared information with the U.S. in advance. The country's trade ministry and the customs agency are also currently conducting investigations into the company to look for possible law violations. And another company run by South Korean nationals in Ireland was also added to the list. The firm, Gov't Semiconductor, was sanctioned for reportedly exporting sensitive electronic components to a Russian manufacturer. However, there are doubts about whether these sanctions will have a strong impact on Russia. One expert says the Russian economy has proven to be resilient, despite the sanctions imposed by the U.S. and European countries in the past, partly because Western countries have been hesitant, worrying that the sanctions may affect the global and regional economies.
So sanctioning the export of Russian oil to other countries might make the entire oil prices go up, which I think would also have a negative impact on the oil price management in the United States. So I think all these factors, I think if applied the same way, I don't think it will be that effective as U.S. and Western countries expect.
Another expert says imposing sanctions on more individuals and companies in countries outside of Russia is a signal to other international actors that there's a price to be paid for working with Moscow to help them evade the sanctions, but also raised doubts about their effectiveness.
So I don't think this is going to change the game. The one thing that can really change the game is getting weapons to the Ukrainians immediately and getting them longer-range artillery. That's the thing that will change this.
Arirang News.
At the Berlin International Film Festival this past weekend, much applause was extended to a pair of Korean directors, including Sang-soo, for his latest screen production. He won the Silver Bear Grand Jury Prize for the new film. Yoon has the plot and more.
Director Sang-soo's 31st feature film, A Traveler's Needs, premiered at the 74th Berlin International Film Festival and on Saturday won the Silver Bear Grand Jury Prize. Telling the story of a French woman, played by French actress Isabelle Huppert, who travels to Korea where she teaches a local woman to speak French. The movie highlights the themes of life's unbearable nature and the importance of communication. This is Hong's 7th time entering the Berlinale competition section and his 5th time winning the Silver Bear. 6 South Korean films were featured at this year's festival, highlighting once again the diversity and creativity of Korean cinema. In his acceptance speech, Hong thanked the jury for the prize and said he did not know what the jurors saw in his film exactly, which drew laughter from the audience. But he also expressed how he trusted working with actress Isabelle Huppert.
This might sound very, very irresponsible, but I don't know what I am doing in a way. As I said to her, I have some objective. And I have a kind of a recognized working method that I like, I have developed, and I believe in a certain, how can I say, happening between people.
Huppert has developed a unique relationship with the Korean auteur. Marking her 3rd film with Hong, she spoke of how everything in her relationship with the director has been unscripted and by chance.
I did 2 other films with Sang-soo, and his way of making films is unique. I only know him for doing films like this, and so I was enthusiastic about repeating the experience. In fact, it's very difficult to project yourself in a story or in a role because there is no role and no story. So, and this is what I really like about it.
Also in competition at the festival was the feature directorial debut of Kim Hae-young. Her film It's Okay, about an orphaned young dancer, won the Crystal Bear for Best Film, an award given out by a jury of children in the Generation K+ section that's dedicated to coming-of-age stories. The Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Yoon, sent congratulatory messages to the 2 directors, praising this achievement as a proud moment that announces the elevated status of Korean cinema worldwide. 이은진, Arirang News.
It's time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paulini. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Let's first begin with the Table Tennis World Championship that wrapped up in Busan over the weekend.
Yes, the men's team, South Korea's men's team, won the bronze medal after they lost to China on Saturday in the semi-finals. But they came ever so close to going through. They lost narrowly 3-2 in a best-of-5. Korea won the first game. Jang Eugin beat Wang Chuqin 3-1, but then China responded. Fang Zhendong beat Im Jong-hun 3-0. Korea then went 2-1 up, with Sang-soo beating Ma Long 3-2. But parity was restored when Fan beat Jang 3-0. Then for the victory, that was sealed when the Chinese player Huang beat Im 3-0. They went on to win the tournament outright as well, the Chinese beating France 3-0 in Sunday's final. In the women's game, China were also the victors. They beat Japan 3-2. But impressed with how the event went overall, the head of the Korea Table Tennis Association, Yoo Sung-min, said he wants to bring the individual tournament to Korea at the earliest date possible.
Moving on to football, South Korea's women's team had a friendly over the weekend. How did they get on?
Well, they won. They beat Czech Republic 2-1 on Saturday in Portugal. Ji Soyeon opened the scoring just 16 minutes in, converting a free kick from way out. Casey Fair then made it 2-0 early in the second half. Eva Bartonova halved the deficit for the Czechs, but Korea saw the game out to earn their first win of 2024. It was an experienced lineup named by manager Colin Bell. For Ji, it was her 155th cap, while Jang Sil-gi earned her 100th. The match was seen as part of preparations for the 2026 AFC Asian Cup, as Korea haven't qualified for the Olympics in Paris this year.
And sticking with the national teams, the men's team might have a temporary head coach in charge for the World Cup qualifiers in March.
Yes, that's what Yonhap News has been reporting over the weekend. But initially, the KFA didn't want to go down this route. But with the new K-League season just around the corner, the KFA faced something of a backlash for hinting at appointing a current manager from Korea's domestic league. It was argued that this showed a lack of respect for the K-League and its clubs. But a source told Yonhap that a KFA meeting, the committee chairman Chang Hae-sung, had a change of heart after they met again on Saturday. Korea faced Thailand twice, first on March 21st and then on March 26th, so there isn't enough time to appoint a new full-time manager. It was announced today also that a third meeting will be held tomorrow at 2 p.m. with a briefing at 4 about who will be placed in charge.
And you mentioned the K-League, the new season begins this Friday.
It does indeed, yes. On Friday, a national holiday in Korea. We have what has become, well, when possible, the usual curtain raiser of the reigning league champions taking on last season's FA Cup winners. That means that Ulsan HD in the East Coast Derby take on Pohang Steelers at 2 p.m. Korea time. Jeonbuk, after a lackluster season in 2023, are at home to Daejeon Hana Citizen later in the day. While FC Seoul, they are under a new manager, Kim Ki-dong. They are away to Gwangju FC on Saturday. But fans might need to temper their expectations with regard to Jesse Lingard, as sources have said that fitness and registration issues mean it's a battle against time. Elsewhere, Gangwon FC host Jeju United on Saturday. Incheon United also, they take on Suwon FC, and then on Sunday, Daegu FC are at home to newly promoted Gimcheon Sangmu.
Okay, thanks, Paul. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.
This morning, the center part of the country experienced a flash of freezing cold. Due to the cold winds, the wind chill temperature dropped to -4 degrees Celsius. The lowest temperature in Seoul tomorrow will remain at 1 degree Celsius. Fortunately, it will rise to 9 degrees in the middle of the day, slightly exceeding the previous year's temperatures. As the daily temperature differences widen to around 10 degrees, you should dress in layers. In the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, where a heavy snow advisory is still in place, up to 7 centimeters of snow are expected by tomorrow. The east coast areas of Gangwon-do province will also receive up to 5 centimeters. Tomorrow morning will start off in cold conditions. Chuncheon at -3 degrees, Daejeon and Daegu 0 degrees. Temperatures will increase in the middle of the day. Daejeon 10, Gwangju and Jeju 12 degrees Celsius. This coming Thursday, it's forecast to rain or snow across the country. After the rain stops, spring frost is expected. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session coming up.
Completely new. But something anyone can relate with. Flawlessly made. And tears that go with it. K-drama. Korea is coming at you with another story to tell. Children's. Laughter. Hope. Dream. K-animation belongs in them. Interesting and valuable story that transcends between everyday life and dream. Surprising spectacle where imagination becomes real. An array of subjects catering from infants to adolescents. For our story to reach all corners of the world. K-animation makes healthy laughter for children.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. As Donald Trump gained a massive win over Nikki Haley in South Carolina, he got one step closer to the Republican presidential nomination. Though Haley vowed to stay in the race, Trump's eyes are already set on November's election, where he is expecting a rematch with Joe Biden. The road to the election, however, does not look smooth, as Trump needs to deal with a wide range of legal troubles, which are causing him financial peril, with legal fees mounting. How is the current political landscape going towards the presidential election, and what are the worries if Trump does get behind the resolute desk once again? For this, we invite Professor Min Jung-un from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Min, welcome.
Yeah, my pleasure always.
And we also have Chris Gasquejo, correspondent at Voice of America. Good to have you with us, Chris.
Good to be with you.
All right, first question to our Professor Min. So Trump secured another victory in South Carolina's primary. What significance did this have for Trump?
Yes, President Trump won the South Carolina primary on Saturday. As you know, Trump received about 60% of the vote, while Nikki Haley got about 40%. So the margin of vote between the two candidates was about 20%. Anyway, by winning South Carolina, it's very likely that President Trump will take the Republican nomination. And the U.S. media reported that Trump is likely to get the majority of the delegate sometime in the middle of March next month. And considering that Trump got the majority of the delegates on March 17th, 2020, 4 years earlier, and Trump at the time was the incumbent president. So it's very fast for the former President Trump to earn the majority of the delegate almost the same period of time this year. So it shows that President Trump is very popular and competent on the Republican side this year. Meanwhile, an analysis shows that the Nikki Haley got a meaningful result in her home state, South Carolina, this time. She lost. But the margin of vote with the President Trump was just about 20%, and it's just smaller than expected, because the opinion polls measuring vote intention in South Carolina primary showed that Trump would easily take the state of South Carolina, and the margin of vote with the Nikki Haley would be over 35%. So the smaller margin of the vote granted Nikki Haley a momentum to continue her campaign until the Super Tuesday on March 5th. But personally, I think that Super Tuesday will be the final destination of Nikki Haley's campaign this year, because she will possibly drop out of the race after losing the Super Tuesday with a big margin of vote against President Trump. And Trump will earn the majority of the delegates, possibly sometime around March 12th next month. So just 20 days left before Trump secures the Republican nomination for the upcoming 2024 November election.
All right, I see. Now, Chris, though she lost, Nikki Haley has pledged to stay in the race through Super Tuesday, which is March 5th, like our Professor Min already pointed out. However, it is widely expected that she won't be able to see a positive twist, a major twist, and some even say she would have to get out of the race before that. How do you see this?
Well, it's going to come down to two things: whether Nikki Haley wants to stay in the race, how long she wants to stay in the race, and how long she can be funded by her donors. Now, she took a big blow when the influential Koch network decided that it will no longer fund her campaign after South Carolina. So their super PAC, Americans for Prosperity, has said that it wants to focus on competitive House and Senate races here in the U.S. But you know, Haley has raised $16.5 million in January, and she continues to raise money. So there's a sign that there are many donors still out there that want to see her continue in the race, even if to just be a thorn in Donald Trump's side and prevent him from securing the nomination as soon as his campaign thinks that he will. Now, Haley's contention is that few voters want a Biden-Trump rematch. Both have very low approval ratings and high disapproval ratings. And she contends that she is the only candidate that can beat Joe Biden in the fall, which several polls have borne out. She's actually leading Biden in the polls. Now, a candidate needs to secure 1,215 delegates to secure the Republican nomination, and a third of those delegates are at stake on Super Tuesday. So there's a lot at stake here in this race coming up. But meanwhile, Michigan's primary is tomorrow. So there's another race for her to show that she's still a viable candidate in this race.
All right, I see. Well, we'll have to wait and see what choice Haley makes and what outcome we'll see tomorrow. But it seems it is highly likely that Trump will get Republican nomination, like our Professor Min already pointed out. And this makes the match between Biden and Trump quite plausible. And reportedly, Biden is extending his cash advantage over his potential opponent. Could you tell us more about this? And could there be any specific reasons behind Biden's fundraising outpacing Trump's?
Yes, as you mentioned, it is known that President Biden has got more the campaign contribution than the President Trump. Excuse me. Specifically, as of the end of last month, January, the Biden camp secured about $56 million in cash, while the Trump camp had only $30.5 million in cash. And regarding the number of campaign donors, the Biden camp had more about 30 more the campaign donors than the Trump's camps as of November last year. So personally, I think that Biden was better than Trump in collecting campaign money because Biden does not have a viable opponent in the primary, and he has been considered as an eventual nominee on the Democratic side. So no other option or no other viable alternatives on the Democrat side this year. So all campaign contributions have been given to the Biden camp. Meanwhile, the former President Trump still has a viable opponent, Nikki Haley, and she secured a good amount of the campaign money from the campaign donors for several reasons, like Trump's legal troubles and his a little bit extreme policy orientations, a little bit away from the mainstream of the Republican Party. So it means that the campaign contributions on the Republican side have been split between the two candidates. And I think that's the main reason why Trump has secured less campaign funds than Biden. But I expect that the situation will change when Trump secures the Republican nomination in the next month. And after he secures the nomination, the race will quickly turn into the general election mode. And the voters on both sides will focus on whether their candidates will beat the opponent in November, although the presidential nomination campaign is still ongoing until early June. So campaign contributions for Trump will increase as we move on to the November election. And it's because taking the White House in November is far more important than Trump's legal, the troubles and other potential possible limitations he shows. So I expect that Republicans will gather under the Trump candidacy, and the same situation for the campaign contributions on the Republican side.
All right, so situation will change if Trump secures his Republican presidential nomination. Right. Now, Chris, let's also talk about some of the woes Trump is facing right now. First is a galaxy of legal problems. His first criminal trial is slated to begin on March 25th. How are his ongoing legal issues up till now, and what effect will they have on the election?
Well, the reality of it is for Donald Trump is he faces a cash crunch. He now owes New York State $454 million, at least $454 million. That's the $355 million penalty plus interest, which is now accruing at a rate of $112,000 a day. And that's in the case where he was found guilty of inflating the value of his properties to see, favorable tax rates from the state of New York. Separately, he's also facing an $83.3 million judgment in the federal defamation case brought by writer E. Jean Carroll. He is facing 91 felony counts across two state courts and 2 different federal courts, any of which could produce a prison sentence. And there are signs from some recent polls that suggest Trump's support could drop a little bit and could swing the election to Joe Biden in a hypothetical fall matchup, a rematch between the two, if he is convicted of a crime.
All right, I see. Now, Professor Min, not just this legal woes, he is also facing this Navalny's death. And as we all know, Russian opposition leader, this Alexei Navalny, died, and some watchers are labeling the circumstances as quite suspicious. Given that Trump was enjoying, nice ties with Putin, is Navalny's death going to in any way negatively affect Trump's race?
Well, basically, I don't think that the Trump's point of view on Russia or his foreign policy orientations in general, I don't think that there's such kind of policy orientations will affect Republican voter support for Trump. Instead, I think the Trump's America First foreign policy is well received by the Republican voters this year. For example, on exit poll on South Carolina's primary voters showed that 60% of them opposed that U.S. would continue to support Ukraine. In addition, the Trump's pushing NATO allies to pay a higher bill is positively received by the Republican voters. So I think that as long as Trump maintains his transactional approach on U.S. allies, and then he makes aggressive statements like his ties to Putin and the silence on the Navalny's death based on his America First foreign policy orientations, then it will not affect much the vote intention of most Republican voters because, as I mentioned, Republicans love what Trump mentions about the America First foreign policy. Meanwhile, Trump's aggressive or extreme statements on foreign policy can affect the voter choice of moderate voters in November. Many of them still want U.S. to remain as a responsible world leader and want to show a strong stance or response against Putin and other dictators in the world. And through the Republican primary this year, it has revealed that Trump has a weakness to embrace the moderate voters. That's why Nikki Haley could receive about 40% of votes in New Hampshire and South Carolina. So considering that the voter choice of the independent or moderate voters can make a difference in November, so it would be interesting to see how the Trump's America First foreign policy would be received by independent or the moderate or late deciders in November.
All right, I see. So instead of Navalny's death, his aggressive foreign policy would have much more negative impact regarding the moderate voters. All right. Now, Chris, regardless of who becomes the next president of the United States, some sources say no previous presidential election was focused on as much on the vice presidency. And this is due to Biden and Trump's ages. Now, before we talk about potential candidates, have there been past cases of the vice president stepping up to take the president's role?
Yeah, it's actually happened several times in U.S. history. Most recently, 50 years ago, when Gerald Ford took the office of president after President Richard Nixon resigned in the aftermath of the Watergate scandal. And Ford is the only president who was not elected president or vice president because he was appointed to be VP after Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned in scandal. In 1963, Lyndon Johnson became president after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He won a full term in 1964, but decided against running for re-election in 1968. Now, going back a little bit further to World War II, in 1945, Harry Truman became president after Franklin Delano Roosevelt died early into his 4th term. He served the rest of FDR's term, and then he went on to another term in 1948. But even though he could have run in 1952, he decided not to because of his own age.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing the details with us, Chris. Now, Professor Min, so based on what our Chris told us, as Kamala Harris is already serving as the vice president under Biden right now, eyes are on who Trump's pick for the role would be. Who are the candidates?
Well, it's not still certain who would be the Trump's the VP choice this time. And basically, I think that there are two thresholds when a presidential candidate chose his the running mate. First, the threshold is to make up for his or her weakness in terms of running the presidential election. The other option is to emphasize or improve or the strength of the candidates, like the Clinton and Al Gore, the combination, to show the viable and energetic, the young white man, the combination in the 2000. But that's not usual because in most cases, presidential candidates tend to choose their vice president out of making up for their weakness. For example, in the 2016 presidential election, Mr. Trump chose Mike Pence, who was known as Christian, conservative, and Republican as his running mate. And with the pick, he tried to make up his weakness as an outsider of the conservative camp. But now it seems that Trump successfully controls for the conservative party. So now he wants to embrace moderate or the moderate independent voters by choosing the female or non-white running mate. And it has been known that Trump has a vice presidential short list with 6 candidates, and all of them are non-whites and the female. So among them, personally, I think that a female candidate like a South Dakota Governor, Kristi Noem, or the black candidates like South Carolina Senator Tim Scott could be the final 2 for Trump's vice presidential pick. Just my personal guess.
All right, I see. We'll have to wait and see. Now, Chris, lastly, I would like to move on and see what could happen if Trump gets reelected. He's reportedly going to plot a much more aggressive anti-immigration policy. Could you tell us more about this and what has been the reaction in the U.S. to such reports?
Well, Trump has pledged on the campaign trail that he would launch the largest domestic deportation operation immediately upon retaking the office. But he and his campaign have offered few details on how he would implement this deportation operation, other than that he will use all necessary federal, state, local, and military resources. There are about 11 million immigrants in the United States without legal status, according to the most recent estimates. Now, nearly 7 million of those are known to immigration and authorities, which maintains a vast database of people eligible for deportation whose asylum cases are still pending. And now about 1.3 billion of those people remain in the U.S. despite having received a deportation order from an immigration judge. Critics note that Trump pushed congressional Republicans against voting for a bipartisan compromise that would have increased border security funding and staffing simply so Biden couldn't take credit. So it appears that, at least to some observers, that he is trying to keep this issue at the forefront so he can take credit for solving it. And whether he wins the election, he has promised to engage in a mass deportation and, incarceration of immigrants who are not in the U.S. legally.
All right, I see. Now, I'd like to ask many more questions, but because of the time constraint, I believe this would be our last question, Professor Min. Regarding tensions between the U.S. and China, Trump reportedly said that he is considering imposing a tariff of 60% or higher to all Chinese imports. Now, given his words, what kind of impact should we expect if he comes back to the original desk on the global economy?
Yes, according to the President Trump's speech and statements, it is very likely that he will implement a very strong policy toward China from the day one of the second Trump administration if he gets reelected. So based on his America First trade policy, he will, as you mentioned, take advantage of tariffs and other trade barriers to reduce U.S. trade deficit with China. Specifically, the President Trump mentioned the universal baseline tariffs and Trump Reciprocal Trade Act. And he argued that these measures will be mainly used to reduce the U.S. trade deficit, increase U.S. government revenue, and create many jobs and increase family incomes in the United States. In addition, Trump also mentioned the 4-year national reshoring plan, and it will ensure that U.S. does not need to rely on China for essential medical and national security supplies. It means that Trump administration will try to decouple with China in advanced technologies and strategic industries. So if Trump administration actually implements the trade policy above, like that, China will strongly oppose it and impose similar trade barriers against the United States and put the export control for critical minerals and other essential materials. It means that the relationship between U.S. and China will get worse, and they are likely to engage in the second trade war or the tariff war. So such a situation will definitely negatively affect the world economy, and the entire world will suffer from the chaotic trade environment. No exceptions for South Korea.
All right, I see your point. Well, thank you, Professor Min. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Professor Min. And thank you, Chris, for your time and insights today. We really appreciate it. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.